Ladies and gentlemen, Seahawks fans of all ages, welcome back to 12 Talk Podcast. My name's Josh, and with me, as always, is my podcasting partner in crime, Mitch. We have an awesome episode for you today with two fantastic guests. We've got Bill Alvstad and Keith Myers from the Seahawks Playbook Podcast, who are going to be joining us right after the break. We're going to be talking all about the agonizing, frustrating, and any other adjectives you've got for it, Mitch, for yesterday's game?
Did you say infuriating?
Oh, no, frustrating, infuriating. I'll go with both of those.
Well, in equal measure, but also to put a little positive twist on it, I was so impressed with how we stayed in the game with a team that are on an absolute flyer this year. I know there were circumstances that were frustrating, but overall, we've gone toe to toe with the Lions and the Vikings, and the Packers was a bit more of a blowout. But we've played some serious teams this year, and we're worse against the Giants than we were against the Vikes, right?
Yeah, worse against bad teams than we are against good teams, which is odd. Just to address that last week, obviously, it wasn't the loss to Green Bay that meant that we didn't pod. It was purely the fact that Mitch and I had such a hectic week at work that we just couldn't find the time with the wind down of Christmas in the UK. Speaking of which, Merry Christmas to everyone. Some of us are feeling festive. Mitch, you're letting the side down. Where's your Seahawks Christmas jumper?
I was wearing Christmas jumpers on the very first week in December. I thought, I was premature with it, granted, but I've worn one already on the pod.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, I'll let you off. But I mean, with that, let's just very quickly give a very big shout out to the UK Seahawkers. So we are the UK Seahawkers official podcast. We're both card carrier members. Mitch, have you renewed your membership?
Yes. I will be. I will be.
Get on it
very shortly.
I've already done mine. If you'd like to have a membership, this is the old one. I need to update this, but the 2025 memberships are now open. It's £12 for an individual, £20 for a family of up to 4 at the same address. Additional £5 if you're outside the UK. You get some fantastic goodies. I'm looking forward to seeing what we're going to get this year. Access to our social events, 10% off at the Pro Shop, chance to win game day field passes, members only competitions, the lot. This is what we got this year. Absolutely fantastic stuff, all throwback related as well. And Seahawker of the Month is back. If you are a member, check your inboxes and you'll have something from your chapter president to tell you to cast your vote for whatever Seahawker you feel deserves Seahawker of the Month, whether that's through charitable giving, whether that's through their actions, how well they support the team and sort of bring in new supporters. So get on that. We love being a member of the UK Seahawkers, some fantastic people, and our next meetup is in Glasgow. Anyone who knows a nice bar in Glasgow, by all means, let us know because we would love to go there. But without further ado, shall we hit that music and bring in our guests and start talking some Hawks?
Let's do it.
Do it. Welcome back, everybody, and welcome, Bill, Keith.
Hey, thanks for having us.
That was a hell of an intro.
Thank you very much.
I love it. Yeah.
Big shout out to Slim Genix for doing the music. Bit of nepotism on my behalf as it's my little brother. But yeah, we absolutely love it. We have some great feedback on that. But this is another crossover pod. We're so excited to have you guys in. I'm excited for another stat off because I know Keith is all about the stats and Mitch is my stat man as well. So I'm going to put you both under some pressure. Bill, you and I can just be the faces. That's fine. We're the pretty ones, we know. But let's talk about yesterday. How are we feeling now? We've had time to digest it. Let's start with, let's go in a clockwise direction. There you go. Mitch, that's you starting.
At the beginning of the season, we made our predictions about what kind of record we thought would be good. And to be honest, we're on track for something close to what I thought would be a good season. But we caveated that. I think we both came at this from the same angle. And we said we wanted to start to see some good trends on defense, some character, some semblance of a system that we could build on, an identity. I'm starting to really see that on defense. I think statistically it's backed up as well that we are becoming quite consistent in some parts of that defense. Yesterday highlighted for me just how much there is a lack of that on offense, or at least an identity that's going to work, I think. First little stat for you is that Ken Walker had 25% of his touches of the ball in the first 28 seconds of possession. We completely abandoned it, and it felt, that stat's wild, but it actually felt like that. When you look back at it, you think, well, yeah, it was a good start, but we completely abandoned it. That kind of thing is what really hampered us yesterday, I think. Yeah, I mentioned it at the beginning. I was fairly impressed with how we stayed in the game, but we saw an awful lot of repeated mistakes on offense. And it was at times it was a great defensive performance that we just couldn't capitalize on by, well, I think the main thing that was lacking was good offensive play calling at times, which leans into the lack of run that we put on display. That's where I am. I don't know. I don't even know anymore how to sort of express my frustration with our offense and the play calling. I feel it's less and less now about the offensive line and more about the way we're sequencing plays. But that's where I am, confused. Bill.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great encapsulation. It's frustrating. I think first and foremost that's the kind of the key word. You've got such a thin margin for error on this team, and we kind of all knew that. I think we're in the same boat when we talk about predictions at the beginning of the year. I was a little bit more optimistic. I think I predicted 12 wins. Keith was at 10. We got there in different ways, as you mentioned, Mitch, but I think my disappointment, and it's kind of lessening over time, believe it or not, is that the margin for error is so small, and we are making those errors consistently. It's like we're finding ways to lose, and good teams find ways to win. And so when you take a look at our record, it pretty much says it all. It's like, that's who we are. We're a team that has its moments. We can win some games. We can put things together. We can put some drives together that look fantastic. And other times we shoot ourselves in the foot. We have an ill-timed face mask. We have a procedure call. We have an offsides penalty that, the next play leads to a touchdown. And so on and so forth, or Geno Smith throwing an interception in the red zone, or to close out the game, while all those guys are battling. There's no question about the heart and soul of the team. Nobody's questioning whether or not these guys are really trying. I think that's evident. One of the things that I think I'm most proud of the team, or where I don't have any issues with, is the process. Like Mike McDonald, the way that he approaches the week, getting the team prepared to play, putting most of the players in position to be successful. Obviously, we've got issues potentially on this show. We can talk about it, but potentially with some position coaches or with coordinators, where we may have some situational issues. But with all that said, I like the process. I like the way that the team approaches things. We may have, and Mitch, you kind of highlighted this, the lack of identity on offense. We may have missed that a little bit, but the identity on the defense is coming together. Sometimes when you have a team that's disjointed a little bit, not quite put together, and missing a few key players, and the talent deficit is just right there, you're going to have situations where it doesn't all come together. And at the end of the day, we all want this team to be successful, and we go into these post-game reaction shows and so forth, and we're disappointed, and that disappointment comes out, and we offer criticism, but if you really step back and look at the high level of this whole situation, we are kind of right where we're at, Mitch, as far as on track to take the next step. And this is not just a 1-year process. This is kind of a rebuilding process. We've got a new coaching staff, new players. Next year is really kind of where you want to see those opportunities to correct for some of the stuff we're seeing now and take that next level. And I think we will. I mean, I'm really optimistic about the future. This season, it's obviously, even if we do get into the playoffs, we're kind of backing in now, and nobody really has any expectations for doing anything once we get there. But at least we have an idea of what we need to do now, a roadmap for where we need to go in the offseason.
Unfortunately, that roadmap involves replacing the offensive coordinator and finding an identity on offense, because it's really hard to identify what you have to do to fix the offense when you run the ball 8 times in a game. Again, when you're not getting blown out either, you just decide not to use 2 of your best weapons on offense, and it was just a waste of talent. And it's been this way all year. We've seen it from the very beginning. Brian Grubb does not like to run the ball, and you cannot win regularly throwing the ball 50 times a game. And somehow, I am surprised that we've made it this far and there hasn't been some sort of mandate by McDonald to get the running backs more touches. And I'm very frustrated with all of that statement, because the offense has talent. Okay, the offensive line's bad, but the rest of the offense is highly talented and should be competent. Doesn't have to be great because the offensive line's still bad, but it should be competent. And there are large stretches of games in the season where they have not looked competent, and that's problematic to me. The defense, on the other hand, started out the year. Okay, we played some really bad teams at the beginning of the year, but then we kind of settled into being one of the worst defenses in the league. And that was not good enough. They made changes. They went through and said, you know what, if we're gonna do this, we're gonna do this with our guys. And they got rid of the 2 middle linebackers that were on 1-year deals that didn't have a future with this team anyways. Made a trade, promoted a rookie, and got this whole thing turned around. And now this defense looks good. Like, this defense is legit. And I think that you can look at all of that and you go, wow, if we can get another piece or 2, maybe another corner, an upgrade over Woolen, that kind of thing, this defense could be really tough. But where's the offense? What's going on the other side of the ball? Where's the improvement? Where's we've seen things get better with the defense over the course of the year. We have seen things kind of get worse with the offense over the course of the year. And that's problematic to me.
I agree. I couldn't agree more. It's I've spent this whole season trying desperately to, as a sports coach myself, trying to tell other Seahawks fans, just, it's a process. Give it time. Nothing comes instantly in the world of instant gratification, especially when you're building a new scheme, trying to get your roster together the way you want it to be, the franchise to look how you want it to be, your franchise. It's not an instant fix. It's not going to be a year turnaround. With that being said, from a coaching point of view, I am becoming increasingly frustrated with Ryan Grubb. So, Bill, you said that, and I think it's been mentioned by everyone. There needs to be this impetus put on. We need to run the ball more. So, Keith, you said you can't throw it 50 times. Completely agree. And every time the question is broached in a press conference, Mike Mack says, yeah, we need to run the ball more. We've got a good room of running backs. And that message obviously relayed back to Ryan Grubb. Now, I stayed up later than I should have done last night because I was seething with rage. And I tuned into a friend of both of our pods, Dan Vienne's, his live. And I had to put a little comment in there because I couldn't hold back anymore. It seems like the message from Mike Mack is, we need to run the ball more. And as soon as he sits in that office with Grubb goes, yes, we do. You're right. But upon game day, Grubb looks at his play sheet, looks at Mike Mack, and essentially just flips him the bird and goes, I'll do what I want. I know better. I'm an offensive coordinator. We're going to keep throwing this ball, which is bewildering. It's absolutely baffling. That was my biggest bone of frustration yesterday. My biggest, I couldn't even put it into words as I was sat there just seething after the game. Between that, some of the coverage errors, what appeared like a complete lack of effort from Woolen for that last Jefferson touchdown, it sort of, everything just sort of capitulated for me, where I had to sit in a darkened room before I could even turn on YouTube and look at these post-game sort of presses. With that, I mean, usually for anyone choosing to our pod, you'll know we do 12 talking points. We didn't want to do that today. We've got a selection here of different views of experienced podcasts and Seahawks fans. So we're going to open up the conversation. Now, I've just mentioned Grubb there. We might as well start talking about the offense, because there were so many blunders on the offense. This time, Keith, let's start with you. Let's go anti-clockwise. Give me what's your overall impression and feeling on this? So you can talk about Grubb, you can talk about scheme, you can give us anything you want, my friend.
Do you know we are the lowest play action usage team in the NFL? You're looking at something that you can do to make your offensive lineman's job easier. This is an offensive line that needs help, and they do that less than any other team in the NFL. That is not a offensive line problem or a talent problem. That's not a Geno Smith problem. That is entirely a Ryan Grubb problem. And at some point, we have to look at all of this and figure out, we have to come to the decision that this isn't working and there is no identity. We need to come up with an identity, and you're not going to do that unless you make changes.
Yeah, before the season started, it was publicly put out there by both Ryan Grubb and Mike Macdonald that we want to be a physical team. We want to run the ball. We want to impose our will on the defenses that we face. We've seen none of that this year. There is no identity. The identity is, let's put the ball in Geno's hands and see what happens, which is not a formula for success in the NFL. Keith mentioned that earlier. It's like, yeah, you can do that now and again, or a couple games in a row against lesser teams that don't know how to defend that. But over a course of a season, you see what the result is: 8 wins, 7 losses. It just is. What it tells me too is that the offensive line is really shitty. I don't know if I can say that on your show. I'm sorry.
Oh, God, well, usually we're a very clean podcast, but it's live. It doesn't matter. It's late.
It's not good, right? It's not good, and it's so bad that they can't be the team they want to be, and there's no fixing during the season. Now they've made some different changes and so forth. It's gotten better in a couple different spots at different times, but the same issue persists. They can't run the ball. They can't run the ball when they want to run the ball, when they need to run the ball, when they have to run the ball in order to close out games. I didn't talk to Mike Macdonald. I listened to Mike Macdonald's show this morning on the radio, and he talked about this issue, running the ball, and Ryan Grubb and the plan and what the deal is. And if you've listened to the show over the course of the season, it's kind of the same every time when we're in this situation. And he, offers up, yeah, we have a meeting, we talk about the plan, and then we go into the game, and the situations as they come up and change dictate where they go, the ebbs and flows and so forth. And in this particular game, it was that Minnesota was really strong against the run on first and second downs. We wanted to kind of avoid that out of the gate. We never got into longer drives or situations where it made sense to run the ball. And so it basically just never happened. Yeah, we know we need to work on it. We're working on it, blah, 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 blah. It's the same all the time. And, the only conclusion you can come to as a fan, as a podcaster, is that the offensive line just isn't good enough to run the ball in their eyes. Now, situationally, they know they need to run the ball. These are not stupid people, right? They've been doing this for a long time. These are experts at what they do. Yet here we are. We're seeing the results on the field. They're not running the ball in these situations. So what's happening? And it's a combination of different things, but clearly they do not have the confidence in their offensive line in order to execute the game plan. And they feel like the best way to win is to put it into Geno's hands, even at the detriment of, what's going on around him. I mean, it's literally, when Russell Wilson used to have to come in and play hero ball at the end of games all the time because Pete Carroll liked to play it close to the vest, and we were always in one-score games. And, at the end of the game, you put it in Russ's hands, and, 6-7 times out of 10, he'd go get it for you. And it's just, we just don't have that margin of error now. It's a lot closer. Geno is not Russell Wilson, although he's got great attributes, and he is clutch, but it's just a different circumstance. We need that balance in order for Geno to be successful. And to what Keith said about running play action, there's some things you can do to help mitigate the aggression of a defense. And that's one of them. And it doesn't make any sense why we wouldn't do it, especially when you consider the success rate Geno has in play action. And so it's tough. It's rough.
Yeah, with the way this roster is currently constructed, with the distribution of the cap and where we're using draft picks and things like that, you look at it and there's an awful lot of cap tied up in skill positions rather than the trenches, and I think that's quite difficult to adjust, really. I mean, you end up with a lot of dead cap if you start cutting some of these guys on big money in order to put that money into the trenches. However, we did do that with our safeties this year. We ate a lot of dead cap to move off safeties and try and get some deals and to patch up in a way that would allow Mike Mack to run a defense and Ryan Grubb to run an offense. I do feel a little bit like we're kind of with the air raid. So it's not quite an air raid offense, but it might as well be with the lack of running the ball. We are trying to use the bulk of the cap on the by putting the ball in the hands of JSN and Metcalf as much as possible, and it doesn't feel like we have the talent on the O-line and D-line. The D-line more so than the O-line, granted. It's been really good at times, but there's not enough talent, or should I say experience, in that O-line, because you could say there's an awful lot of talent in that O-line with the age profile that we have in that O-line room, but there's not an awful lot of snaps under their belt, and that they seem to have this naivety at times. So they get beaten by star rushers and things consistently. It's infuriating, but I do feel like we're relying on the DBs and we're relying upon the wide receivers and the quarterback to bridge the gap that's left by not having that money invested in and draft picks invested in the trenches. It's kind of where I feel we're at the moment.
Yeah. So for me, the Ryan Grubb thing's really starting to infuriate me, as I said before. However, if I'm looking at this from a head coaching point of view, I brought in a college coach. I'm going to be acutely aware of the fact that there are going to be teething issues coming from a college system into the NFL. As we all know, having seen college players go to the NFL and coaches and everything. However, I don't know if it's the lack of ability to adapt or The straight up refusal to adapt is what is really starting to infuriate me now. So yes, we've got a bad O-line, but as Keith said, we are the last in the league, 32nd in the league at play action, and Gino is pretty successful with play action. Why is he not using it more? Yesterday, the lack of run, so 8 carries for Walker, who's just come back from an injury and then went off with another. 3 for McIntosh, which I'm very happy to see, just get the ball in his hands. And then you had 1 for Zach Charbonnet. That is not enough. Not enough at all. And when you look at how well Charbonnet's been playing recently behind this bad O-line, it doesn't compute. The fact they go, oh, we're not good enough at it at the moment, so we just throw it in the bin. You know, first and second down, we know that they're really good at stuffing the run on first and second down. Fantastic. But you still hammer it for a little bit and you see what happens. You don't just completely negate it and say, yeah, they're really good at that. We've seen their tape, so we're just not going to bother. We're going to try and throw it. And when we started throwing it towards Gilmore, I put this on our X and our Blue Sky. I said, right, they've realized that you can pick on Gilmore for a bit because he's older. I said, but don't do it too much, because you do have to remember that only a few years ago, he was classed as an elite cornerback and he will do something. Lo and behold, what happens? There's just I'm going to call it teething issues because I really want to give them the benefit of the doubt as a young and inexperienced coaching staff. I know the frustration of 12s across the world because I read our game day thread on our Discord. I saw everything that was on social media and it is palpable and I completely understand it. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt because they're young and inexperienced. However, Mitch and I said on our pod that all we want from this year is to see progression throughout the season. But I can't see a steady upwards curve of progression. It has become so many peaks and troughs of it, of us playing a fantastic brand of football where we think we've got an identity, to the next week we just completely lose it because they're not steadfast in what they want to be and what they want to do. And that for me is the most frustrating part of this offense at the moment. JSN getting a 1,000-yard season, however, you know, the fact Grubb actually realized he's got an elite weapon there. I don't want to go on too much for a rant.
Can I speak to that just really quick, Josh? So one of the things you kind of said what's been going on in my mind a little bit as far as seeing the progression being a key. And we saw that on the defense, and it's actually made us feel really confident about going into next year, adding a couple pieces. The defense is set. We're good. We have a competent coach. We can beat NFC West teams that we haven't beaten for 3 or 4 years. On the offensive side, you're just not seeing that progression. You're not seeing the improvement. You mentioned the idea of seeing adaptability and just really having that not be there for Ryan Grubb. And it's been there in little pieces here and there and so forth. And we thought, well, we saw that Arizona game at Arizona. Maybe they've turned the corner. And the last 2 games have said, maybe not. And so my proposal is this. It wouldn't shock me that Mike McDonald and company chose to bring Ryan Grubb back next season for the reasons that you stated, in that this is a team that's teething. He needs an opportunity to continue to develop what he's already got going. Some of the things that he does are successful. He hasn't been able to add a full repertoire of things that are, though, so it's very incomplete. It's hard to even evaluate a quarterback as seasoned as Geno Smith in this offense because the offensive line is so poor. And so it wouldn't surprise me if they take the approach of, we want to see this offensive approach with a personnel grouping or a group of players that is more aligned with the way that the offense wants to operate. And right now you're seeing that deficit at Tomlinson at left guard. you're seeing maybe Oluwatimi is what they have now, and it's okay, but maybe they want to upgrade that spot in order for them to be able to run some more power, for example. Maybe at right guard, Lumen is fine this year, but maybe next year he takes a big step. He gets in the off-season weight program. It's just a better situation for him. He might be the guy, but also he could be improved as well. And so, and you add that in the mix, as long as, and maybe an upgrade. I don't know. I hate to say this. I can't even believe I'm saying this out loud. Over Tyler Lockett as a third wide receiver, a guy that's able to contribute a little bit more. Maybe do some quick hitting passes, something that's getting out of the hand of the quarterback a little quicker. Maybe some yards after catch opportunities. So there's ways that you can improve the offense. And you mentioned earlier putting guys in position to be successful. Maybe we put Ryan Grubb in a position to be successful by giving him the players that he needs to operate the offense now more efficiently. Now that's a point of view. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying that's a point of view that the coaching staff and Schneider and company could take on this that maybe nobody's really talking about right now.
Let me offer the counterpoint to that. And that would be that the game plans that Ryan Grubb is drawing up on, like, during the week, like, what is implemented on Tuesday, isn't working. The Seahawks are the worst team in the NFL on opening drives. They got passed by the Panthers this week, which is depressing. And they've scored 12 points on their opening possessions. So when you give Ryan Grubb, an opportunity to look at the opponent's defense and their tendencies and design how he wants to attack that defense, given all the games, they've scored 12 points, 4 field goals. Bill challenged me. He was like, well, maybe that's, I need context league wide. What is it for the Seahawks? The Seahawks have given up 4 field goals and 5 touchdowns on opening drives, including opening drive touchdowns both of these last 2 weeks. So they are, and this is a good defense Seattle has, right? They've been able to make the adjustments and get stops and all those kind of things. It's a good defense, and they've still given up, opening drive touchdowns because opposing offensive coordinators are able to figure out, hey, this is what they do, this is how we attack it, and we make them adjust to us. There's none of that for Seattle. There's none of it. They come out opening drive. It's been scripted. It's been practiced. Execution should not be an issue, and it doesn't work.
That's the worst part.
Yeah,
scripted plays, scripted opening drives, awful.
Yeah, it's probably the worst, the worst attribute for Grubb, because ultimately he does make in-game adjustments. The offense most games gets working. We saw that in this one. There were, the offense eventually came back. They took a lead, and if it wasn't for Woolen kind of giving up on a play, they probably win that game with that, or even with the the Byron Murphy face mask. If that doesn't happen, they probably win the game. Which means the offense got working and it did enough, but it shouldn't have to wait until halftime adjustments, or at least have a couple of failed drives and okay, now we're going to change what we're doing. Figure that stuff out on Tuesday, just like the other teams do. You should be able to, and it's very frustrating to know coming out that you're probably going to spot the other team 7 points and you're going to do nothing, and you're playing from behind every week.
Do you know what annoys me the most? And I really dislike saying this person's name because I did not like him when he was a Seahawks coordinator. Shane Waldron's opening drives, scripted opening drives, were really effective at times. And it's not something I see from Grubb. Amy has just put in the chat, apart from saying that she's sad again because we're throwing out stats that are really hitting home how bad we are with things, that she doesn't think there is a script. I think it's just like Grubb goes, right, Gino, we'll you go out and we'll have a look at what's going on. These are your play calls and see what happens. and this is where we're coming up against some of these head coaches and offensive coordinators throughout the season who have scripted their opening drive so well. And like you said, Keith, it's like they know our tendencies on defense. So they're scripting their opening drive just to counter that. And then they end up in the scoring drive and we're playing from behind. And it's just so it's mind numbing the amount of times I think about why we aren't scripting plays, why we aren't at least testing the defense to start with, and going for the open spots using our big hitters, and it's just not working. I can't spend any more time thinking about it now. What I'd like to do very quickly, Mitch, go on. You say your
I was just going to add one final bit.
Say.
This is a short point from me for once. I'm not going to rub it on. Just one thing to add in, really. The scripted plays are not good, right? They're not. They haven't been good this year. What also hasn't been good is red zone offense and our play calling when we're backed up towards our own end zone. Those are all situational parts of the offense where we should have go-to plays, things that we've practiced religiously so we can be effective in the red zone when we're backed up. And these sort of opening drives, they should all be practiced and known, and they're the worst parts of our offense. So I think that adds in and adds weight to the fact that we're not polished on the things that we should have emphasis on.
I agree. Gentlemen, before we have a word from our charity sponsor, is there anything else? Well, stick with the offensive side of the ball. Was there anything else that you guys wanted to, get out in the open? Did you want to talk about praise, maybe? I had praise for the fact that we hit 3 tight ends in one series. I genuinely thought I blacked out for a minute and was dreaming. But yeah, but it baffled me. I don't think I've ever seen that. I've not seen that this season. Is there anything else you guys want to sort of bring to the fore? We're on this platform for a reason. Who would like to go first?
Well, I mean, everyone talks. Geno Smith is a hot topic on social media, as we all know, all season. You've got detractors and promoters, and sometimes the answer lies somewhere in the middle. We're pretty reasonable around here, seems to me. And Geno is very good in certain situations, and others he's proven he's not been. Now, you can point to the offensive line and issues there and so forth. And earlier today, Keith and I recorded a show, a little reaction show, and we finished our show by taking a look at Geno in the last play, the interception, and we really kind of broke that down. And in the end, I think Geno made a mistake, obviously, through the interception. But what led to that? What were the mitigating factors? There's always a factor, right? And there were a couple things at play there. There's a lot of bashing out there about DK Metcalf giving up on a route and all that kind of stuff. If you really break the route down and so forth, DK Metcalf did exactly what he was expected to do on that route. He had double coverage, man coverage right off the line, and then actually a 3-high safety look on the defense. One of those safeties was over the top of him, about 15-yard cushion. So he was going to be covered on this route. When Geno was looking at the line of scrimmage, he would have been a no-go right off the bat because of that double coverage in the situation with 1st and 15, nearly, at the 12-yard line. So he shouldn't have even been thrown to. What happened was the defensive tackle, so it was a 6-man protection, max protection, with a running back in the backfield to help block. So it had 7 people back for protection, Geno, and 3 people out running routes. Minnesota was running a 3-man rush. So we had 7 blockers for 3-man rush. 3 of our blockers didn't engage in anybody. Abe Lucas and Lumen didn't block anybody, as well as Tomlinson, if I remember correctly. I'm not looking at the play right now, so I'm just going off memory. And then Oluwatimi was lined up against the defensive tackle, and we had tight end blocking one edge, and I think the running back was picking up, or the Abe Lucas, I think, was blocking the other guy. And the Oluwatimi kind of lunged out after he snapped. It was Geno Smith was back behind the line of scrimmage. Olu snapped the ball, immediately beaten off the snap on a spin move by the defensive tackle, and that defensive tackle was in Geno's lap in like 1.5 seconds. So Geno had to throw the ball or take the severe sack either on the 1 yard line or for a safety. And Geno threw the ball up, and he should have thrown it out. So Geno should have thrown the ball out of bounds over DK's head, and that should have been the play. He made a mistake by trying to throw it to where DK was supposed to be, but missed on that because DK was running a route that was about 20 yards deep. Geno ended up throwing the ball about 12 yards out. He didn't have time to look in the other direction where Jackson Smith and Jigba had single man coverage on the far left flank, and the tight end was going to run an in route, and it was just a miss by Geno. But there was a lot of factors there that led to that. So it was clearly a play that Geno is going to take responsibility for, but some mitigating factors there. I would just say this, Geno plays you into a lot of opportunities to win. In fact, he did in this game. Gave the team a chance to win, led them on a drive with 4 minutes left, took the lead. If the defense has the stop and Byron Murphy doesn't get called for the face masks and puts them into 3rd and 18, this could be a game that we won. And there were a few other opportunities to say you won too. So this just wasn't on Geno, as most games aren't just on Geno. There's a lot of other factors in here. So, as far as bashing him and so forth, it's hard for me to listen to that when there are so many different things at play.
Yeah, Geno he's a gunslinger. He's going to make mistakes. He might throw himself into trouble. But given the opportunities, he tends to throw his way out of that trouble. And what we saw in the Green Bay game was that he just never was able to. He got hurt and never got a chance to really put some drives together to get it, basically to throw himself out of trouble and overcome the mistakes early. In this game, I felt like he did. He made a lot of plays. He had 2 interceptions. Both of those interceptions were pretty bad. But he also made a lot of plays in the middle. And so at some point, you got to give him credit for those and recognize that he's not the problem. He might not be the best quarterback in the league, but he's not the problem. There's plenty of blame to go around and people who deserve it more than he does. So, yeah.
I agree.
To caveat that, you guys have made such good points that I tend to agree with them. But playing devil's advocate here, we played a game here where we had more offensive yards than the Vikings, and we lost the turnover battle and ended up by 2. Right, it was 2 inch. There wasn't any fumbles with it that I can recall. It was literally just the 2 interceptions. But we've lost the turnover battle by 2, despite having more offensive yards. And we've only lost by 3 points. And that speaks to 2 things, I think. One, how good Geno was between those interceptions. There was an awful lot of good work. And that ball to JSN, who essentially was in double coverage, right? But it was fit just over it was a beautiful ball. There's a lot of good stuff on tape there. But the defense kept us in that game to the extent that we can have 2 offensive turnovers more than our opponent and only lose by 3 in the last few minutes of the game. So, there's like you say, there are 2 sides to that story with Geno yesterday. But the turnovers for me were the defining factor. But as you say, there are individual mitigating factors within each of those instances. But yeah, from a zoomed out lens, the turnovers killed that game for us, I think.
I think with Gino as well, it's the amount of detractors he has on social media is unreal, just throughout the fan base. It's quite toxic, I'll be very honest. And when you look around the league, it could be worse. You know, we could be dealing with.
It could be far worse.
You know, we could have, God forbid, we have someone like Aaron Rodgers at quarterback. I think I would stop watching Seahawks football if that happened. We could be Las Vegas. You know, there's so many teams out there in much worse positions. Gino is who he is. All of his issues and interceptions have come when he has been heavily pressurized and he feels the need to throw a ball. But unfortunately, it happens more often than not because his O-line is so bad at times. But then he leads you on a drive, like the scoring drive yesterday, like I said, with 4 minutes left, where he was in his bag. Gino was, in my opinion, playing as an elite quarterback there, driving us up there. He was throwing balls at like an absolute laser. Some of these were on a rope. That ball to Barner in the end zone, that was just as crisp as you'd like, to the point where Barner, I'm surprised his celebration wasn't him shaking his hands with how much his palms must have hurt catching it. The conversation, this is something we'll go into the off season because Mitch, being our draft guy, he's been looking at a lot of the quarterbacks there, and this will be an ongoing conversation. I'm sure you guys will as well. Gino isn't the problem. He is a problem, but not the problem. The biggest problem, as we said, and we keep saying, is offensive play calling in this O-line. If you put him behind a decent O-line, and he's had that sporadically throughout the season, where he seems to have had an age to throw, which sometimes isn't to his benefit anyway. But you give him a good O-line with good play calling, he will make more positive plays than negative. But I think everyone latches onto these negative plays because in the back of everyone's mind, it's Geno Smith who's flamed out at every single franchise he's been at. So he's going to make these mistakes. That's what Geno Smith does. That's why he's not been a consistent starter in the league. But you'd have to look at what he's done for the Seahawks. We wouldn't be in the position we're in now without Geno playing the way he is.
Well, the only team he's started for is the Jets, other than Seattle. The other places he went, he was a backup. Yeah. So I think it's unfair to judge him on the fact that he didn't play, given that he played behind some decent quarterbacks. But you know, the fact that Geno has had this resurgence in his career with Seattle, and then we saw yesterday Sam Darnold is suddenly a good quarterback. We are one Zach Wilson resurgence away from basically the Jets being told to never draft a quarterback again, because I think we're seeing more about the fact that the opposing, or the reputation of the quarterbacks has more to do with the team that drafted them, New York, than it does their actual talent. And Geno's been good for Seattle. He's been a good player. I haven't always been his biggest fan. I haven't always been the guy that's like praising him. There are times I'm frustrated as hell with him. But big picture, you stand back and you look at all the stuff he's done in his 3 years as a starter. He's been good. So is he worth the giant cap number he's going to have next year? That's a completely different conversation. But again, he isn't the, if you're dealing out blame, you're going to give blame to a lot of people before you get to him.
I tell you what, if that game ended a little bit different and we got that stop on defense, where Byron Murphy had the face mask, and then the very next play they go and they scored to Jefferson over the top. Now, we mentioned Woolen a little bit giving up on that play. He was actually expecting some help over the top there with Love coming in a little late. But, you know, that would have been a whole different conversation. Geno has 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, leads us on a game-winning drive, right? We're in a driving position for the playoffs, etc. So it's football's funny sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's just key to your point with Darnold and Geno. It's the epitome of get drafted by a dumpster fire, play like hot garbage. That's exactly what it is. There was a
Love
nice.
that. I love that.
There was a nice moment yesterday, and so another UK sort of Seahawkers pod, the Pedestrian Podcast, had the announcer on from yesterday's game, and they were talking about when you have Mark Sanchez in the booth, you have Darnold and Gino. It's essentially like that Jets quarterback Spider-Man meme of them all pointing at each other like, why didn't you succeed? Why didn't you succeed? And it was a fantastic bit from sort of Stuart and Adam on that pod, which they used in the broadcast as well. And I thought, yeah, you know what? It just goes to show. But I think I don't want to sort of praise the Jets too much or praise the ex-Jets quarterbacks, but I think Darnold has come into his own. I think Gino doesn't deserve half of the grief he gets online from the fan base, and quite rightly so. At the end of the game yesterday, he got heated with the fans. And there's only so much, even though a professional sportsman, there's only so much hate you're going to take. And like Bill just said, if the game ended slightly different, there was no face mask, and we'd managed to stop them on that drive, Gino would have been praised as a hero. But as it happens, Gino then, after they scored that touchdown, Gino had to think of a way to try and play hero ball whilst under pressure. He made the wrong call. He had pressure in his face, and he just threw it to DK. Big target, thinking, that's fine, he'll get it. He always comes down with it or does something, but it didn't happen. And as a result, he gets panned for it. So before we get onto the defensive side, we partner up with the Robin Cancer Trust, a sort of germ cell cancer charity, and we do like to just sort of let everyone know about them. So we'll be back in a minute, and then we'll go on to the defensive side of the ball. See you shortly.
I want to take a minute just to introduce you our charity partner for the pod, the Robin Cancer Trust. The Robin Cancer Trust is the UK's germ cell cancer community. For those of you who don't know what germ cell cancer is, that is testicular and ovarian cancer, and the RCT was set up following the family tragedy, which sadly saw them lose their son and brother to germ cell cancer. Germ cell cancer is something that can affect anyone at any time, and the RCT, Robin Cancer Trust, do a fantastic job creating awareness through the various campaigns like Talking Bollocks and Not Overreacting. If you or a member of your family have been affected or think you may be affected by it, please visit their website, therobincancertrust.org, to see how you can spot the signs, how you can manage it, and become part of the community. And if you'd like to help fundraise or give anything to them, by all means, that would be absolutely fantastic.
There you go. Shout out to Robin Cancer Trust again there, and to my awful editing skills. One day we will get the full message of that. Let's flip over to the defense. So, who wants to start us on the defense?
I don't mind going first here if we want to go clockwise again. Yeah, I thought overall it was a really good performance by the D. I think there was plenty of pressure. We got home with a couple of sacks. We were pretty stout against the run. There's lots to like. There was plenty of 3 and outs. I thought we gave the Vikings a really difficult day on offense. What really hurt was poorly timed flags. I mean, Trey Brown lining up in the neutral zone was schoolboy, and it obviously resulted in an immediate strike for 6 with a touchdown. I think it was the play after, right? And yeah. we were otherwise off the field. And then you look at the end of the game. I mean, that was quite early. Look at the end of the game. There's the face mask from Byron Murphy, and there was play after play from Woolen where he was beaten early and was relying upon his athleticism, as he often does, to bail him out, or support from someone else coming over to help. And sometimes it got there, sometimes the help didn't, and it just felt like there was 95% of a defensive performance there, and it was punctuated by really badly timed egregious errors. They were just super costly time after time, and unfortunately that often puts a real highlight on a player that's otherwise had a pretty good game, but you remember them for the moments. And when it's a 3-point loss to a team that have been as good as the Vikings, it just really feels like missed opportunities because of those moments. But otherwise, I thought it was a really good defensive game.
Yeah, I agree. I guess for me, I mean, you kind of said it all about this game and such. Other than the couple penalties, I don't have any complaints about the game itself. I mean, we held them to 4.8 yards, 4.8 yards per play. 3 for 12 on third down attempts. This is a game we should have won if you look at it from the defensive perspective. And you go look at Gino's stats, 3 touchdowns, you take those 2 interceptions out. It's a game we kind of controlled. I mean, you look at it, that's why everyone's kind of frustrated, really, is because this is a game that was available to go get. And it just didn't happen for us. It's one of those games you look back on at the end of the season, you go, man, we should have had that thing. But if you take a look at a high level kind of picture of this thing, there's a lot to be proud of. There's a lot to hang your hat on and say, you know what, we're just a couple pieces away from being pretty elite. You mentioned being able to stop the run. You take a look at the last, the 4 games prior to Green Bay. You throw the Green Bay game out. You take a look at this game. There's 5 out of 6 games, the last 6 games where we've played pretty darn well. We've defended the run very well. We're a top 10 defense statistically, EPA, et cetera, DVOA. So those are a lot of things that you can take forward, and we will take forward. So I'm really excited about the future. I love defense. Mike McDonald turns out he's the right coach. We got that figured out. That's a hard piece, right? It's like the coaching cycles in the NFL are really hard. You either get one or you don't. And looks like we've got one. That's going to be a big piece. Now we can build a team in his image. He inherited the vast majority, like 75%, 80% of the roster. Now that will slowly transition into having him own that entire roster in the next 2 or 3 seasons. And so we've got an opportunity to really improve, and really the defense just needs a couple tweaks to me, and it's there. The offense is obviously the part this year that's going to need the most turnover.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all kind of in agreement that the defense has definitely come around and become a strength. In this game, Aaron Jones, they gave him 18 carries, and he only ran for 67 yards, 3.7 yards per carry. That had a lot to do with Seattle being able to come back in this one, because being able to stop Jones made it so Minnesota couldn't just milk the clock and make it so Seattle didn't have enough time to get back into it. They were able to come up, stop it. They were forced Darnold to throw, and Darnold only had 7 yards per pass attempt, which is not particularly good. So overall, I mean, it's a great performance by the defense, with one exception. Can somebody cover Justin Jefferson? 10 receptions, 144 yards, 2 touchdowns. Like, of all the players on that entire team, he is the most dangerous. They should have game plan. They gave him too much space, and he took advantage of it. Like, somebody cover Jefferson. You have to, and you can't let him have that much free reign.
You have just led me perfectly onto my point there. Can't take it away from the Vikings. Between Jefferson and Addison, they've got 2 elite. It's an elite pairing of wide receivers. It's whichever one you cover, the other one's got to feast. Unfortunately, we let Jefferson feast, and he is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. Mm-hmm. We cycled through all of our DBs trying to cover him. Job had a time. I think he made Witherspoon look foolish quite a few times. And all Witherspoon could do was start mouthing off at him, trying to trash talk him. But trash talk only works if you're winning. And then we put Reek on him. I have an axe to grind with regards to Reek Woolen. He didn't start the game due to it's essentially a team protocol violation. I don't know. I'll have to get the direct quote from Mike McDonald. He came in, and I've noticed this throughout the season. I know he was expecting the help from the safety over the top for Jefferson's touchdown, the game-winning touchdown. But if you look at the effort from him on that whole play, it was non-existent. For a man who's got, was he 4'2", 40-yard speed? He let Jefferson breeze by him, and there was no effort at all for him to kick it into fifth or sixth gear to try and catch him. He jogged behind. He just watched him go. And even when he saw that Love was going to be too late, he didn't even try and turn the afterburners on. That, for me, was a bone of frustration. If I'm coaching a player that I know that's their ability, and they decide not to use it when they need to, even effort, that's all you look for, and there was none there. I'm seriously starting to question, and I started this earlier on this season when Mitch and I started the podcast. Is Reek Woolen the right type of cornerback for a Mike McDonald defense? I do not think he is, and I think it's becoming increasingly evident, possibly with some of the background conversations that have been happening with coaches, which has probably frustrated Reek and hurt his ego a little bit, that he may not be here. So Seahawks fans, I apologize if you've bought his jersey. That's the reason I always buy a 12 jersey. But I am starting to really see chinks in Reek Woolen's armor. It started last season with his inability to tackle anything. This season it's improved. He's put on some mass, but he's still not a fantastic open field tackler. And as the season's gone on, his effort seems to have diminished to the point where it's like he's sulking. He sees something go by him, and rather than DK Metcalf chasing down Buda Baker, as a prime example, all effort, using the gifts that God's given you, he just seems to watch it happen and go, oh, he's gone past me. What am I supposed to do now? You're supposed to run. You're supposed to earn the money you're being paid and play for your team. And that was not that occasion. I don't know how you guys feel about the Reek Woolen thing. That's just where I am with that one player.
We've seen the exact same thing. We've talked about it on our show different times. Last year, I think at times the defense really struggled, and you saw that present itself with being detached. I think I saw it with Quandre Diggs, for example, a player with, we know, a lot of ability, Pro Bowl ability, that took plays off. That I remember one time Woolen missed a tackle, and Quandre Diggs came over and laughed at him.
I remember it.
And I was thinking, okay, that guy's gone. That guy has to be gone. Like, you can't have that infected into your system. And that's kind of what happened last year. And I thought Reek had was kind of detached at times, didn't seem to be involved, took plays off, just kind of had that lackadaisical kind of whimsy about him. Every report you had in the offseason said that he was working hard. He was over his injury. He was one of the players on my list of what players could benefit the most from Mike McDonald's scheme. He was certainly a guy that you could say, yeah, he's going to be put in the best position to be successful. I'm excited to see what he's got. Started the year pretty strong, and then, like you just said, he just seems to have lost interest in playing hard. And I don't know if it's an injury. I don't know if it's in between the ears. I don't know what's going on. Obviously, a team violation of some rule that they have. Mike McDonald in his coaching show today decided not to disclose that. Wouldn't even say what the rules are. But it was a violation. And it was one of those things where it was like, this guy also isn't really kind of coming through for his team either, during the week. And they benched him for it. And so now I'm questioning whether he's going to be back at all. Now he's under contract, but
it's
a trade piece for the right defense. You know, he could be a fantastic quarterback for them. It'd be a good trade piece, could possibly garner fourth, third. To be honest, I think you're probably going to be looking at sort of fifth round for him, the way he's performing and the way his attitude is. But yeah, it's so sad to see because, and I said this on our social medias last night or during the game, Reek Woolen's been living off his rookie year reputation for the 3 years he's been in the league now. He came out in a Pete Carroll defense and he shone because Pete just said, use your natural gifts, go and seek the ball, do what you can. And he looked like a superstar, an absolute hidden gem. Last season, he got found out massively when people weren't throwing at him, they were running at him. And in a contact sport like football, if you cannot tackle somebody, that is a huge red flag. And this season, another red flag seems to be attitude and effort. Now, I am in no way a sports coach at the level of Mike Mack or anyone. There are leagues above me with more knowledge, more experience. But as a people manager, I look at that and instantly, like you said, Bill, that is a toxic behavioral trait like Quandre had, laughing at him for missing a tackle, that I do not want in my locker room. And I don't care how good you are or you are perceived to be from historical data and performances. If that's the way your attitude is, and it probably isn't going to improve going forward, you're out of there. And it's
agreed.
I think there will be a pod in the future where even before cuts are made, it will just be a tick list of who we want to see go. I've already started formulating mine.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I've noticed with him is his technique at the line of scrimmage is pretty poor. And so you have a situation where Pete Carroll had a system that he wanted his cornerbacks to use when they were up in press. Step. It's called the kick step. Yep. And he required it. And he was, him and his coaches were always just meticulous in what they wanted the footwork and technique and stuff to be. And this year, without Pete Carroll there, without that emphasis there, his footwork has become crap. And what you see is him get beat on almost every play, but he's so freaking fast, he gets himself back into position. And on that play, the play that started this conversation, that the go-ahead touchdown to Jefferson, he didn't get himself back into position. Partly because, the effort, it didn't look like the effort was there. But Jefferson's also got wheels. And, you're not going to be able to, it's a lot harder to get yourself back in position when you get beat against a guy like that. And if he's not going to focus on his technique and avoid getting beat at the line of scrimmage, then there's a ceiling for how good he's going to be and how good a defense with him in it's going to be, because those fundamentals have to come first. And not seeing it, it's really disappointing. I wanted to see much bigger things from him this year. We've seen him tackle better. We've seen him be more physical, but we've also watched his footwork just disintegrate and him just expecting to be able to catch people because he's faster than them. And that's not good enough, not in the NFL.
No. And I think what's really interesting is that year one for Reek Woolen, we thought we were seeing a really, really high floor, but actually what we were seeing was his ceiling in year one. I think the league were trying to test him through the air, and they played to the one real advantage he had, which was being really, really good ball hawking and using his speed to put him in positions where he could recover and make a play on the ball. And give it time. What people were actually asking him to do is make tackles in the open and compete at the line of scrimmage, and he can't do it. And the technique is so horribly lacking that what he needs to have as a baseline is effort and athleticism, and those things recently have also gone. And what he looks like now is a very, very average corner in this league as a result.
I'd just like to say, Amy, thank you very much for your comments there. You've obviously We know that you've joined us late, but sometimes Mitch can be very cutting and very honest. And it was harsh, but correct. And this is something that I have a bit of a. So we've talked about Reek Wallen. I just want to. We've praised the D line. We have 3 sacks coming from Reed, who, in my opinion, needs to stay on this team for as long as physically possible, because I see him as the real leader on that interior D line. And then you have Mafe and Hall, who both had sacks. I can't help but feel there should be more every game. I don't know whether I'm just greedy, but I really feel there should be. And with that, I really feel that someone like Byron Murphy should be contributing, apart from his face mask. And everyone's saying he does a lot of stuff in the background. I'm not seeing it. Am I the only
so many
one?
sacks come from coverage, though, as well. I think if the coverage was better and they had a bit more time to get home, you'd start to see an awful lot more production and conversion from pressure to actual sacks. But the good thing is we've got that contain on the line. Like the actual quality of the edge work is so good now. The Darrell Taylor days are gone, where there's a clear liability on one side of that line repeatedly. When Nwosu is coming in as the rotational piece on that line, you've done something right. But yeah, I think the lack of sacks at times, or the lower numbers, are purely because we're not maintaining coverage well enough to give that time to get home. I think that's one of the biggest factors.
Regarding your point about Byron Murphy, I remember when Jerron Reed was drafted, and he had a pretty good rookie year, and then he came on his second year and looked really good. And I remember one of the coaches being like, "Yeah, you come in, you're used to being the star, you're just trying to do your thing, and it isn't until you get through your first year that you start realizing, I need coaching, I need to really learn." And that was what happened with John Reed, and that he was pretty good as a rookie, but he was really good his second year. And then his third year was the year he had the 10.5 sacks and just kind of exploded. And that a guy like Murphy, there are splash plays where he just explodes into the backfield. So the talent's there, the ability's there, but it's a matter of putting it together so that happens way more regularly. And I think it's just a situation where rookie defensive linemen tend to not make huge impacts, especially interior ones. It's really not till year 2 that you start to see them show up.
So you can't talk about edge, because I think Jared Verse is having a fantastic season in LA, and that pains me because he was one of my favorites in the draft.
You can't draft them all, Josh. You can't draft them all.
I know.
We wish we could.
Yeah.
just to add to Keith's point, I think Jaron Reed and Byron Murphy are really interesting sort of comps in some ways. I mean, they're clearly not the same player, but they can both be catalysts for the line. I think if you get too hung up as a rookie D lineman with getting those TFLs and sacks and making those impactful plays that fill up your own stat sheet, you can lose sight of the fact that when you're eating double teams and you're creating pressure and flushing quarterbacks into the arms of Mafe and Hall, you are impacting the game without getting those stats to your name. Byron Murphy's done that all year, and it's Jaron Reed's the biggest thing about Jaron Reed that I love is the fact that he is this selfless catalyst on the line. I mean, if you asked Big Cat who was his favorite running partner on that line, it would be Jaron Reed every time, because he just enables Big Cat to feast, and it is just exactly what I think Byron Murphy will be in his first and second year. He will be a enabling force for that line.
I'll sit down and get back in my box then. That's fine. I was going to wax lyrical about Reed as well, but you guys have done it for me anyway. With regards to defense, was there anything that any plays in particular that stood out to anyone where you can say that was amazing, that's exactly what we want to see? Or I've already mentioned the Reek Wallen one. That's really going to stick in my craw. I can't get over. Well, defensively.
I tell you
Oh,
what,
sorry. Yeah, defensively. Yeah.
I just want to
I
mention
tell you
AJ
what.
Barner at every given opportunity.
If
remember
it
him
wasn't
playing
for the
defense.
penalty, the face mask penalty, that Byron Murphy play was amazing.
Mhm.
At the time, it was the key moment in the game. It was total, takedown for loss, and it was just an unfortunate. Got his hand up in there and lost track of kind of where he was. He briefly grabbed it. He says he didn't. If you look at his presser, he was upset at the call, but when you watch it, he grabbed it just for a split second there, and that's all it takes. It's ticky tacky, if you want to call it that, but it was a legit penalty. But if it wasn't for that penalty, that would have been the play of the game.
Yeah. One thing that stood out to me was a play that was almost made, and that was Ernest Jones back about 20 yards off this the line of scrimmage, almost getting a pick. And we were told that okay, the two middle linebackers that are going to roll this year, they're not always the best, come up, get a ton of tackles, but they're really good in coverage. And then it turned out they weren't really good in coverage. And you get Jones. Well, Jones is this downhill tackler. He's going to rack up huge tackle numbers, but maybe he's not the greatest in coverage. I don't know. That was a play that very few middle linebackers make. It would have been nice had he actually, kept control of it. But honestly, he made a play that was just phenomenal. And it's kind of the opposite of the Reek Woolen thing that we were saying ago. It was all effort. It was all effort. He's been such a difference maker. The defense was awful before him, and it's been really good since they traded for him. And yeah, he's not the only thing that's changed, and it's not the only. But there is a correlation between him being on the field and that defense being good. So they better freaking re-sign him. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah,
I've thought of one.
Oh.
Kobe Bryant. There was a moment where there was a huge hole. I think it was in the A gap, and he just appeared out of nowhere and shut it down.
Yeah, that was nice.
It was lovely. And one of the things that I was most concerned about with Kobe was in run support, and he showed good instincts, physicality. He read the game brilliantly, and he stopped what could have been quite a big gain through that gap. So that one stood out to me.
Yeah, positively, Marfay's sack. I just thought that was Mike McDonald sort of reaching into his bag, and he hit the F it button and went, I'm just gonna put pressure on Darnold now. And Marfay just did Marfay things. He's and I said greedily again, there are certain players in this team that I just want to see get to the quarterback more. And Marfay is one of them. And I understand that the sacks are being evenly distributed when you look at everyone's sort of sack totals. But I love seeing Marfay get to a quarterback. Just the way he gets around a tackle. He's got his swim move. I think the bend that he has to get around people with such speed, and he started adding a bit of power to it now. I think that's what happens when you've got Derek Hall as a running mate as well. I thought that was fantastic. That got me out of my seat for a very silent scream very late on in the evening in the UK. So we've mentioned defense, but let's just go quickly back to the offense. Mitch, we'll start with you because I know you want to mention your boy. So obviously, Bill and Keith, I don't know if you're aware of Mystic Mitch here. So 2 years now on the trot, Mitch has delved into his bag of tricks, looking at his crystal ball, and he's rightly predicted 2 Michigan players being drafted by the Seahawks. We have Mike Morris, someone who we're yet to see come alive in the Seahawks defense, but hopefully, depending on what off-season moves are made, that might happen next year. And this year was your boy, AJ Barner. Would you like to talk about his fantastic play?
For the record, with Mike Morris, I predicted we'd take him in the 5th. I didn't say he'd be good. So I mean, we've yet to see him particularly do anything worth writing home about. But yeah, AJ Barner, it was more about the throw that was made to Barner than anything else, because it showed extreme trust that he could make that play. And we've seen AJ Barner trundle for first downs here and there. We've seen him, bundle his way in for a touchdown. We haven't really seen anyone really lean into his skill set rather than his physicality. That showed extreme trust. There must be similar catches being made on the training field, because that's something we expect or we would rely on someone like Metcalf to go up there and bring that ball down. We've seen Jake Bobo do it, tiptoeing right at the back of the end zone, pull it past where he can get it. Yeah, but
he's alive.
That for me shows that he's won the trust of Gino and Grubb, because they're putting him in positions to make really tough plays, and he's rewarded the team with a great touchdown.
That was fantastic.
Mhm.
Bill,
I would say the overall play of Jackson Smith and Jigba. 8 receptions, 95 yards. The touchdown was spectacular. Over 1,000 yards on the season. Congrats. This is a guy that we were all hopeful at the beginning of the season that would emerge, but last year he kind of showed us, but we weren't sure, 46, 50 or 60 receptions. But this year he's going to get close to 100 receptions, really exploded, taken the grasp of the number 1, number 2 wide receiver on this team. Really allowed us to legitimately say that we can move on from Tyler Lockett without having to get another player of that caliber. He's already on the roster. So I love that.
Yeah, I was going to praise Barner, but for a completely different reason. He's not on this roster to be the pass catcher. That's what Fant's for. He's on this roster to be Will Disley and be that guy that you can trust on the outside blocking. And even on, the game-losing interception, he was locked up one-on-one with one of the 3 pass rushers. And he had him, and he wasn't getting through. Like, he was blocking competently, as you would expect a left tackle taken on the defensive end. And that's what he's here for, is to do that, and then a little bit of the other stuff. And he does it extremely well. Yeah, his past stats and whatever, I don't think they're ever going to be impressive, but he's fantastic at blocking. And it's one of the things that really frustrates me that they can't get the offense or the running game going on offense, is because when you've got a guy like that who can block, and he's not an offensive lineman, you can move him around, you can put him at different places, give him different angles, and you know that he can be successful doing it. So they've got this kind of blocking weapon that they could use to open holes, and they don't use him well. And it's just really frustrating.
Yeah. My comp at the beginning of the year for AJ Barner was Kittle. And I know that's a really lofty comparison, but Kittle coming into the league was block first, with a tendency to be extremely difficult to stop when he gets ahead of steam, taking, it's needing linebackers to pull him down, not defensive backs, which we've seen from Barner. In fact, coming out of college last year, there was only one tight end in college football that averaged more yards after contact, and it was Brock Bowers, who may well be, give it 10 years, the greatest tight end that we've seen. Based on projection and what he's showing already, that could be
that
the case.
Comments to be revisited in 10 years on the pod.
You can clip all of that. There's the George Kittle bit there as well, but that's a valuable receipt to keep, Josh. You can rub that one in my face. But yeah, no, he's starting to show that reliable blocking, like you said, Keith, and he's showing to be a weapon. And we've already seen him trundle down the sideline and need multiple players to stop him. So
I love that guy.
We don't need to be paying 10 million to players like Fant if we can get really good production out of 4th round draft picks.
I'm going to give just a quick shout out to my boy Kenny McIntosh. Let's have a look. So rushing yesterday. First of all, let's go receiving. So he had 1 reception for 15 yards. He had 3 rushes for 14 yards. And let's not forget his kick returns. We had 3 for 91 yards. Now, any opportunity to give a player like that ball in hand, whether that's from a kick return, as a receiving back, running at the line because he's not afraid to just put his head down and go through the gaps that he's asked to go through. Unlike K9, which is another conversation for another day. I don't want to rile up the 12s too much because I know people will come at me. I just think he needs to have more exposure to this team and this offense. I think he's heavily underutilized. I think they're finally starting to bring him in more and more for everything that he can bring. And I just love seeing them actually get the opportunities yesterday. I'm very conscious. Go on. I was very conscious to talk about him a lot.
Well, he started the season as a complete unknown. Last year he didn't get in. He was injured. You don't know what you have. This year he comes in as it may be the clear number 3 running back option. That was in dispute for a while. He was never really considered for kickoff returns. He was at 4th, 5th guy option at best at the beginning of the season. Chenault, then you had D. Williams, then you had Derek Young, and he was an afterthought. So when he gets an opportunity, he comes in and he does his thing. You earn your spot. And it makes you wonder what the evaluation process is to begin with. Here's a guy it's already on your team. He's got that opportunity. That's why you drafted him to begin with. So yeah, I'm glad he's shown up. And when he did show up, he produced. So hopefully next year.
Attitude and effort. He sort of encapsulates that. This pod has been usually for the 12 Talk pod. We go through what we call our Discord member musings. We had some fantastic questions, but I'm very conscious of the fact that we've been having a fantastic conversation between 2 Seahawks podcasts for nearly an hour and a half. So we might have to save those Discord member musings for a separate pod for me and Mitch after Christmas. But before we sign off, for our listeners and watchers who may not know about the Seahawks Playbook Podcast, would you guys just like to know where they can find you? You said you've just recorded a new episode as well. I've got a notification for that. When's that out?
It's because it hasn't. We recorded it, not publish it.
No, I just published. I published it about a half an hour before we push record on this show, so it's just out there. Seahawks Playbook Podcast. We've been around for a little while now. We're heading into our 9th season, starting in February. So you can find us at Seahawks Playbook Podcast. We've got our own website. You can find us on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube channel, like you guys. If you find us, subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment. We enjoy those. You can find Keith on Twitter, Blue Sky, myself as well. And we just enjoy. I was saying to you, Josh, before we hit record, that we kind of do the show for ourselves first and foremost. We like the subscribers, we like the engagement, but we're just a couple of guys that really enjoy talking Seahawks football and sitting down and having a beer once in a while. And that's the best part of this entire thing, honestly, is getting to know Keith over the long period of time and becoming friends, and just really the community in general.
No, so like I said, I've been a long-time subscriber of you guys, so I really appreciate what you guys do, and it's awesome having you on. Sorry, Keith, I interrupted there.
Oh no, I was just gonna say thanks to Amy. She said that Bill and I are great, and considering most YouTube comments that involve me are not always positive, I'm gonna take that one and roll with it. So yes. Thanks, Amy.
We'll frame that. I need to take a screenshot right now and put it in a frame for you, my friend.
It'll just be the comment with sort of this much of Keith's head as well. So, but I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure having you guys on. I mean, for anyone who's tuned in, who's commented, usually we'll try and put as many comments out as possible, but we've just enjoyed talking to you guys. Luckily, I've just amended where we put our like and subscribe stuff. Otherwise, this would be all over your faces. So obviously, we're the 12 Talk Podcast. If you find us either through YouTube, Spotify, your favorite podcasting app, we're also on X, Blue Sky, Instagram. We've got a Facebook group as well. We've not progressed to a website yet because my technical know-how isn't up there just yet. Please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for both us and for the Seahawks Playbook Podcast. And if you would like to talk to Mitch and I and many other members from around the world, we also have a Discord. Mitch will pop the link in the comments as well. It's also the pin post on RX. You can talk to members of the Discord and Seahawks fans 12s from Germany, the UK, the US, Canada, Gibraltar. We've got a few more that keep coming in as well. It's a fantastic opportunity just to talk Seahawks, and the thread on game day is amazing. It pops off, and the king of the Discord, as always, right next to me here. So by all means, come and join us. We'd love to talk to you. It's been amazing having Keith and Bill on. We really appreciate you guys. We appreciate everything you do as well. So I love the podcast. I'm just so glad you guys got to do this with us.
Thanks for having us on. Really, it's been great.
I'll leave this with rather than say usually we finish with a Go Hawks, but it's the 23rd of December, so I'm just going to say Happy New Year and Happy Christmas to everyone. Because in 2 days' time we get the big jolly man with the white beard. I was going to say white coat. No, that's someone will take me away after another couple of days. My 5-year-old coming to deliver presents. So from all of us to all of you out there, happy Christmas. Have a fantastic new year. We'll be back with another podcast review. I'm pretty sure the guys here as well will be as well. Make sure you like and subscribe. All right. Go Hawks,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.